Welcome to Sisters in Company Talking About It live show. Hosted by me, Dr. Sharon Cradle and Sherelle Higgins. We will be discussing intriguing, intricate, inspirational, informative, and intelligent topics with our individual twists and talents.
We will present real stories, real solutions, and engage in real talk.
So we invite you to be our company every Sunday afternoon at 3 o'clock p.m. as we focus on transcendent thinking that will move you forward. You become the company you keep.
What company do you keep? Oh yeah, we are biological sisters by way of the south side of Chicago. So get ready to keep company with us and our guests as we talk about it.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Sisters in Company Talking About It Live. I am so excited about today's show. As you can see, I have my guest co-host here today. My sister Sherelle is in Chicago, as she says, kicking it
All right.
with the family. I keep trying to tell her I don't know where she gets all that energy from. We were at a conference all weekend long, the Women Who Win conference, where she was the MC, and I participated as one of the speakers and did some other things. So I'm tired. I guess that's just being the oldest sister. And so since she's not here, I am going to say that I am your favorite co-host.
All right.
And so, ladies and gentlemen, we have our guest, my soror, my sister friend, Dr. Yolanda Lewis Ragland. Let's welcome her. Yay! Woo!
I'm so excited.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, I am looking forward to what she has to share today. And before we get started, I'm going to read my scripture, then I'm going to come back and tell you exactly what we're going to discuss today. And so the scripture reads, and it comes from 3 John 1 and 2. Dear friend, I pray that you may enjoy good health and that all may go well with you, even as your soul is getting along well. And so as you can see in front of us, we both of authors. She actually wrote a book about food and health, and we're going to talk about that. And I actually wrote a book about the mindset, as well as a journal, because I believe that journaling is healing for the soul.
Absolutely.
And so we don't do it enough. And so, Yolanda, thank you for being here. Introduce yourself to our guests. Tell them who you are and what you do. But before we go there, let me send condolences to the McCain family.
Absolutely.
Because we lost a great American today, and
Absolutely. And I am, personally touched because my daughter, her name is Sequoia, she went to Madeira. She graduated from Madeira in 2017. And one of the parts of their curriculum is that as juniors, they actually get to go on Capitol Hill and they spend time with the congressman. And my daughter had the fortune of actually being with Senator McCain.
Oh, that is amazing.
So
Good for her.
when we got the news, she was particularly touched. And one of the things that she said was just when she met him, how important he made all people feel, even these high school students. So I'm personally grateful for his service and for how he even treated my own child. And I think personally, I feel how he treats all Americans. Yes. Just a phenomenal example of a human being.
Phenomenal human being. Yes, so our condolences to the McCain family.
A great American.
Yes. And for those of you who have been following the show a very, very long time, we had a guest, E. Tyrone. He was an attorney, he's a friend of ours, and he came on and talked about wills and trusts. And the only thing I want to say is, we've heard about the death, and we did a tribute to Aretha Franklin last weekend, but since then we heard that she did not have a will or a trust. And the only thing that I can say is, we just have to do better. We have to do better. And the reason for that is, although she has an estimated worth of $80 million, now her sons and whoever else have to stake claim to that money.
Absolutely.
And of course, it has to go into probate, which means that the family has to spend a lot of money to settle it.
Hopefully, just to get what's rightfully there.
Exactly.
And it's a matter of a few moments, a couple of pieces of paper, an attorney. They're online. You can look up online last will and testament. There's so many short,
Yes,
easy ways.
tools.
But someone with that much money,
Mm-hmm.
it is a travesty that someone
And it's
did
happening
not,
over and over again. So
advise her
they
better.
did. They
So,
advised her, but ultimately, as we're going to talk about,
We're gonna do what
it was
we
her
gonna do.
decision. Exactly.
mindset.
Yeah, it was a mindset, and so I'm saying to our listening audience,
Please.
no, you're not. You're going to die when you die.
Right.
Just because you complete a will and you sit down and have that conversation
Yeah.
doesn't mean that you're going to die.
Die any sooner,
Yes.
right?
And one of the greatest things you can do for your family is make sure that in death, when you die, that your affairs are in order so that they don't have to deal with that on top of losing a loved one.
On top of the mourning.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I had a student to tell me the other day, well, he said, well, I don't want my sister to have my money, and I don't know what I'm going to do with my money. I said, give it to a kid that's in need. Give it to a charity, a cause, do something, but just don't leave it for the government.
Absolutely.
So we just urge everyone, one of the things that's for sure and for certain, none of us get to not die.
It's going to happen.
It's just going to happen. No matter how we feel about it, it is what it is. We were born to die. So you're going to have your loved ones, and their legacy is at stake. If you have any property, some retirement accounts, all kinds of things. So assets. So make sure that it's going to the people that you want it to go to.
Absolutely.
All right. And then finally, as you see, our show is really about everybody, but it's Sisters in Company talking about it. And today is Women's Equality Day. And for those of you who've heard of it, but you're not quite sure what it is, it really is in celebration of the anniversary of the 19th Amendment.
Right.
And so the 19th Amendment, it prohibited states and federal governments from denying the right to vote to citizens on the basis of sex. And so this is our Women's Equality Day, and it started to be celebrated in 1973. And so information is powerful, and I wanted to talk about that because what we're going to talk about today is all the information that's available to us and why some of us just choose to not pay attention to it.
Absolutely.
So thank you for that. So, Dr. Sora Yolanda, introduce yourself to our guests. Tell us where you're from and what it is you do, and we'll engage in conversation.
Okay. All right. So my name is Yolanda Lewis Ragland. I go by Dr. Yolanda. I'm actually from Washington, D.C.
Yes.
Moved when I was very young, grew up in Seattle, Washington, went to college in California, did Peace Corps in West Africa, and then I returned to Washington, D.C. for medical school, where I went to right here down the street, HU.
Howard.
So definitely.
Wait a minute, hold
HBCU.
on. Most of our guests that come on the show, they try to be so modest. And my sister, we just go in. She didn't just go to school out in California. Tell them the school you went to, because that's a pretty big deal.
So I was at Santa Clara University and Stanford University. I actually pledged at Stanford,
Yes.
1990,
Yes.
couple years ago, and but it was a phenomenal experience. And so once I, had the majority experience,
Yes.
I was very excited and determined, especially after living in Africa, to have an HBCU experience.
Yes.
And so I was thrilled to come to Howard, and it was one of the best decisions I'd ever made. And that's a whole nother topic, a whole nother show. But I will say this: my mom passed while I was in medical school, and the thing that got me through unequivocally is that I was at an HBCU, and the support that I had, and the people that rallied around me, specifically my sorority sisters.
Yes.
It was just a phenomenal experience. And I know, I really feel in my heart that might not have gone the same way had I been anywhere else. So.
And so you were where you were supposed to be at that time.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And so you have some beautiful children.
I do. I have 3. My oldest, I just finished getting settled down at Tulane. This is her second year.
Yes.
My middle child, my only son, comedian in training. He's a mess. He is in Philadelphia. He goes to Penn Charter High School. He'll be a junior this year. And then my baby girl, who is going into 8th grade, who is actually, her birthday is Founders Day. She's a
she's
Founders
a
Day
Capricorn, just like me. I like
Founders Day baby.
wonderful.
So she is. In fact, this year, just talking about mindset and choices, very headstrong, wants to homeschool for her 8th grade year to get ready for high school. She wants to be more than prepared. And I homeschooled my son one year for his 6th grade year. So this is something that she made a choice about. And I said, hey, we can do it.
Absolutely.
So.
One of my dearest friends, one of my besties, as I call her, she let her son, I think he was homeschooled for 8th grade.
Yeah.
Actually, down in Georgia. And that was a good decision for them. And I think that worked out very well for them. Yeah. And so, Yolanda, you are a pediatrician.
I am.
Talk to us about, why did you select or choose to become a pediatrician, and tell us, what do pediatricians do? What do they study and focus on?
Right. So this is actually a very important topic for me, because children are extremely vulnerable. They're very important. They're not just little people. I think a lot of times people think internal medicine, they deal with adults. Oh, you guys deal with children and they're little people. Their systems are vastly different. We have to know, down to the minutia when it comes to dosages and things like that, because it's not just a little bit less. We have to know by pound when we're dosing and things like that. So the reason I went into pediatrics really had to do with my Peace Corps experience. In West Africa, I did some work with maternal and child health, and I worked with a Cuban OBGYN doc. And I was like, oh, this is great. I was toying between the two, OB and peds. What I ultimately decided is what I liked about pediatrics was that there's a span of a lifetime I get to deal with.
Yes.
So there are babies, there are children, there are adolescents, and then there are young adults. And it was very important to me that I already recognized that there's this mentorship that's natural with Black women.
Right.
That we're automatically mentors to young girls, to young boys as well, but particularly our young women are vulnerable to low self-esteem, to not having these opportunities, and to needing someone. And they were naturally drawn to me when I was in Peace Corps, and I realized I would like to be a pediatrician because I want to help mold and mentor. And honestly, it's nice to have somebody when you walk in a room look like you.
Right.
We can talk about it all
day long.
But when you can walk into a room and you see a Black female judge, a Black female lawyer, a Black female doctor, a Black female bus driver, anything, all walks of life. It's not just about being, high professionals. It's about finding areas where we look like those that are servicing us. There's a level of comfort.
Yes.
There's a level of understanding. There's a level of honesty that I know that I get from patients and their parents that a lot of people don't get.
Exactly.
So this real thing that we share, it's so universal. This sisterhood thing that we talk about, it's not just about American women. This happened while I was in Peace Corps. That the women in Africa, when I was in West Africa, they talked to me about things they hadn't told Peace Corps volunteers that had been there for years. And because most of those volunteers had been white, there are very few Peace Corps volunteers that are African American. So when we showed up, there were 5 of us in a group of 30, and that was the first time they'd had more than 2 Black volunteers in years. And the amount of progress and development that I experienced in that 2 years was phenomenal. So it really had to do with that experience and just realizing I have a lot more opportunity to influence and help and mentor and mold as a pediatrician than probably any other part of medicine.
Yes, and one of the things I am very clear about being an educator is that, we can have all the book sense and book smarts all we want, but that exposure is everything, exposure. And, we talk about this PI formula that Harvey Coleman came up with, and it's about performance, image, and exposure. And he talks about that those are the keys to your success. However, the exposure piece is the piece that really constitutes the majority of your success. So that's why we have to go places and do things outside of our comfort zones so that we can be exposed to different things in life, and it changes your perspective. I'm sure it changes your perspective.
Going to and living in another country, not just it being Africa, that helped a lot, but just going outside of who I was and growing up in a military family, that was something that was not at all discouraged. I think sometimes we have to recognize that we may even discourage our children and discourage people in our communities from trying to do something that's different because it's abnormal. It's not something we know. We're afraid, so we make others afraid. And my mother, I'm the only girl, the youngest of 4, but she had served in the military. She was a master sergeant in the Air Force. My brothers had all been overseas. They had been in Korea and Japan. So by the time I said, Mom, I want to go to Africa and be a Peace Corps volunteer, she was like, when you leaving?
That's right.
I was like, okay. So I didn't have any discouragement, and it was such a beautiful experience. But like you said, it was the exposure that really taught me a lot about my ability to perform.
Yes.
I had not been tested. I thought I'd been tested to the girl. I thought pledging was something.
Yeah.
And then I went to Africa for 2 years and had to eat food that I never seen. Had to speak in another language for 2 years. I was immersed in the language. I just had to navigate a system that I knew nothing about. It taught me so much about who I was and what my ability was and who I could be and what just all kinds then anything I had learned up until that point. Exactly. So I think you're right, exposure.
And I think it's phenomenal, and that's what we have to do for children.
Yes.
And we're going to talk a little bit more about that, but we have to do that for children because I always think about, most parents do the best they can.
Right.
They just can, and they only know what they know. But when you think about some of us as adults and our adulthood, I look back, I'm like, wow, people are like, well, you've accomplished a lot. Yeah, I have, but I think I've been kind of slow in my development because of my lack of exposure.
Right.
And so trying to get out here and navigate and do some things, it took a push. It took some decisions and it took some people to help me. But in terms of our development, what we don't get in childhood, it slows us down developmentally.
It arrests us
exactly,
in some areas
exactly.
Until we find out. You don't know what you don't know.
No, you don't.
Until you find out that you didn't know. It's just so funny. I say it all the time. The smartest people that I have encountered don't really think they're that smart.
Right.
They're still learning. They're
still learning.
They're still going to school. They're still opening books. They're always absorbing information. And I'm thinking, I remember like we were talking, we were talking about my training. So I'm a pediatrician, but I'm actually double board certified. So I'm also a bariatrician. And I remember when I was getting my second board certification, and people were like, really?
Yes.
What
Yes.
you going to get another one?
Yes.
And then last year I did 2 years ago, I did a master's in adult education.
Right.
And people were like, okay, really, how many degrees do you need? And what I kept saying is, it's not so much that I'm looking for letters behind my name.
Right.
What I was looking for is a deeper understanding of how do I better serve my community. And with the adult education piece, it was because I educate medical students. I educate residents. So there's a difference between how a child learns and how an adult learns. A child is a clean slate.
Yes.
So you can tell them stuff they've never experienced before, and they're going to believe you just on GP.
Face value.
But, like
adults
you said, it's a slow process when you're an adult.
Yes.
So we got our own experiences.
Yes.
We got our own issues that are going to counteract something. So you have to have this shift in paradigm when somebody tells you something that you don't quite believe, but you have to actually open your mind to it.
Yes.
So there's a different way of teaching and even learning.
Yes.
And so I love like having these kind of conversations and having people like you in my life because again, you're still learning, you're still absorbing.
And unlearning.
Yes,
I'm going to tell you something about it. We don't talk about it a lot.
Good.
We always talking about learning, but there are some things I had to unlearn. And I'm still in that process of unlearning some things.
That is the truth.
And in the conversation I had this weekend about I had to talk about marriage, winning in marriage. And we know there are 4 seasons to marriage or 4 stages, but I talked about 7. But I started with the iceberg theory. Yes. And a lot of people they're not familiar with it because it's really a business principle. But if you really think about it, it's so powerful, and we're going to get into that when we talk about the health of children. It's the stuff you see on the outside that we tend to make judgments about or try to understand. But it's all that stuff underneath that's lurking that you have no idea what's happening that pushes those behaviors and those things you see to the top. And that is why we cannot make judgments about people. We really have to stop and think about, how blessed we are. Absolutely. And I say this all the time, I don't wish anything on anybody, but certain things, I'm glad it's not my story.
Absolutely.
Because people have some stories, and when you start seeing things that's happening on the surface, you can rest assured that there's some things underneath that. But let me say this to
cause
you,
and effect,
and no
yeah.
doubt about it. You said something that was so powerful, and I know that you probably see a lot. You talked about, childhood. I don't know if you talked about abuse and things like that. I think you mentioned that earlier.
Yes.
I don't know if you know this lady. Her name is Laura Coates. Laura Coates is a correspondent on MSNBC, and she has her own show on Urban View. And Laura Coates is African American female. She is phenomenal. She was a former prosecutor, and when I tell you, she's just all that, and she's humorous, and she just got a special. It's something special about her. But anyway, on Monday. And she's from D.C. On Monday, she's not from D.C. She's actually from Minnesota, but she films out of D.C.
Okay.
But her daughter, 4-year-old daughter, goes to some school that's diverse, and her 4-year-old daughter came home and said, well, Mommy, the little white girl so-and-so, they told me I can't play with them and that black is ugly. And so now her 4-year-old, you talk about self-esteem, that's what you're talking about. 4-year-old is like, Mommy, I don't like black. Black is ugly.
Right.
Why am I black? And she literally broke down on the radio because she said, I don't know what to do with that. Because she sees her mom, but she just sees her mom, so she doesn't associate her mom with color,
black,
right?
white, yeah,
and
any
all
of
the
that.
phenomenal things she's doing. And so I thought about you the other day, and I knew you were going to be on the show. What do you tell parents in terms of how to manage those babies?
Look, there's two parts of me that wants to answer. There's the black mama in me that wants to,
exactly.
bear cub, mama bear come out and then there's the pediatrician,
right?
That says, okay, look. So what I will say is this: first of all, it hurts me.
Yes,
it really pains me because one of the things we're always talking about is this thing called ACEs, right? So ACEs stands for Adverse Childhood Events or Episodes Events, and some of the people who are in terms of a community, we experience more ACEs than practically anybody. And I'm not exaggerating
race, in terms of
when
race.
it comes to race and gender. So we got 2 strikes against us, right? Now, we can say everybody, there's multiple races and everybody's having this problem. But in this country, we have absolutely pitted the 2 against each other. White over here, black over here, and everything else is in the middle.
And then colorism.
Right.
Between.
That's what I said. Everything else is in the middle.
Yes.
So there are these people who, if you're closer to light or lighter, then maybe you're more acceptable in the elevator when you get on the on the elevator with someone and they're walking next to you and you're light and you're not really intimidated. There's all these crazy things that we've done. But when you have a little girl that is put down for an immutable
and she doesn't understand
characteristic.
Exactly.
You can't change your skin color.
No, she has.
So now you've told me that something that I have about myself that I absolutely cannot change is horrible. It's horrific. It's unacceptable.
Especially
it is detestable.
Especially when we're inundated with what
all
beauty looks like,
right?
and,
That's my point.
And they look at the images.
So there are people who would say, well, at 4, all you got to do is build up herself. It's not that easy, especially in America, because all she's going to see are the commercials with the white woman. See, it is so funny. People don't see it. They think it's when you're not paying attention to it. You're clueless,
like, It's
but I'll say this: subtle things like I was watching a commercial. Commercial had a white man, a white woman, and a black man. And they were talking and they were on this couch. So what you saw was there was a white couple and the black man was alone.
Yes.
He had no love interest. And it was something, might have been
something
about
subtle.
But it was something about a television, a radio station. It was something simple. I think Dish TV, something really silly. They had another image, same commercial. They had white woman, white male, black woman. the white male and the white woman were together, the black woman was alone. So there's this notion that we don't have a collective, we don't have families, we don't have units.
Those are the images.
Nor do you deserve one.
Right.
The cleaners commercials, when I tell you, I see them all the time, and I take note of them because as a black woman, I see that I'm not seen as a leading lady.
Right.
I'm not seen as beautiful on these magazines. So when a child, though, has this kind of experience, it really affects them for the rest of their lives. And we need to, there's so much to talk about.
Right.
But one thing I'll end with is one of the things that really interests me, if I find interesting, is that in the news today, we're talking about the immigrant children.
Yes.
And how ripping them from their families is detrimental. The effects it's going to have for years to come, and how we need to really rise up and do something about this. And all I can think about is the children that were ripped from the slave parents on auction blocks that were sold off.
But that's a distraction.
Kids whose parents get pulled over by police,
all the time,
shot in front of them, or at least harassed in front of them. Our children experience ACEs all day long, every day. And then my question is, when that happened to the little girl, what was the school's response?
Exactly.
What was the teacher's response?
And so,
because that's where it lies with who's in authority to actually have a real conversation and let this little girl who calls someone out of their name, because that's bullying.
Yes,
right.
It is bullying.
That's a form of bullying. That's a form of harassment.
Yes.
That's there's all kinds of words we can use. Now, had one of us done something, it would be called what it is, but then so that's another
and our kids
form
would have
of
been
injustice.
suspended.
Right. That's another form of injustice
It
that
is.
we watch.
Exactly.
That when someone else does something, when a young boy in college, white boy, rapes a girl, he's what we bring before the jury and the judge are his grades and how good of a student he is, and so there should be leniency. When a young black boy has the same fate, we don't talk about his grades in school, his community service, or his family
They'll
ties.
find something wrong with
They're
him.
going to look and
Exactly.
dig for something
Yes.
else. And so it's just so much.
But the reason I brought it
discrimination.
up is because from a public school perspective, what we know is that more children are coming to school younger and younger drugged because they have depression. They have all of these things going on with them. And so we just have to be very mindful, ADHD, OCD, whatever you want. They want to put a label on them. And I tell you, children are giving you messages that they need some love and some nurturing and some discipline. That's what kids are telling you.
Nurturing, discipline. And I will say we got to address, like, real self-esteem and equality from the beginning. When rules apply to everybody, then you feel safe.
Exactly.
But when rules seem to be arbitrary, when I only get stopped for something, or when this child doesn't get in trouble for doing the same thing, guess what? First, they learn that behavior is okay, so they continue to do it.
Exactly.
And we're living under an administration that has found out you can do anything you want to do. So when you don't stop behaviors, it has consequences.
Yes. And so I just had to get off on that tangent.
Yes.
And anybody that wants to participate, you can call us at 833-202-8255. And I think my sister was going to try to call in, but I don't see her popping in yet, so she just may be enjoying the show. And hopefully everyone is on listenvisionlive.com, where you can see the show in its entirety, all of our social media followers. And so we always talk about doctors. We look up to doctors and we say, okay, we don't want to be a doctor because they went to school for so long. Well, when I was looking at and thinking about, Dr. Yolanda and all the schooling she went through, I was like, well, I've been through that much school too.
Yeah. And you are a doctor.
Yeah, doctor of education.
Right,
exactly.
in your own right. And
Oh,
that's
no
one
doubt.
of the things I
no
always
doubt.
talk about. And that's one of the things I'm
no
really
doubt.
interested in.
Yes.
Is actually a doctor's suite where it's not always about medical doctors.
Right.
Because
That's all people kind of
PhD,
recognize.
Yeah, when you say, and I have one of my best friends, she's a pharmacist, pharmacologist, she's a pharmacist, she has a PhD, and they'll say doctor, and then they'll ask her, oh, so you're a physician too? And she's like, No, but I am a doctor.
That's
And
right.
I'm like, yes, you are a doctor, because it takes just as much time
Exactly.
to master what you've mastered in education as it does to master,
Yes.
you know, in medicine. So
I was doing some research, and I see, because I said, I really don't know the amount of schooling, but I see that typically you have to do 4 years of undergraduate school,
Yes.
then 4 years of medical school,
Yes.
and then 3 years of a residency, and then you have to pass this rigorous test called the MCAT.
Yeah. Oh, that's the first test.
That's the first
So the
one.
first test is the MCAT. That is actually into medical school. While you're in medical school, then you
okay.
have your boards.
Okay.
So this is and you have step 1 and step 2 of your boards, and then after that you have step 3, which is your board certification that you have to pass to become a board certified. Whatever your specialty is. So for me, it was a board certified pediatrician. But I then went beyond that and got a second certification.
Right.
So I'm double board certified
Right.
in both pediatrics and something called bariatrics, which is the medical treatment of weight loss. So a lot of people have heard of bariatric surgery, and so
Right, we
that's
have.
bariatric surgeons. I am a bariatrician, which is the medical management of weight loss. So it involves, as my book shows you,
Yes.
it involves the nutrition, nutrients, supplements, all the stuff that really you have more control over than, and then if you cannot, and you have a lot of weight to lose, or you can't quite lose it with just those measures, then maybe we'll consider surgery.
Okay, so you all know the show goes by so quick. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a break, and hopefully you all will call in or send us a message or a question on social media so that we can answer those questions. And then when we come back, we're going to talk about some of our commonalities and talk about her books as well as my book in terms of how it all connects to wellness. So hopefully you all will stick around, and we'll be back shortly.
All right.
Welcome to Sisters in Company Talking About It live show. Hosted by me, Dr. Sharon Cradle, and Sherelle Higgins. We will be discussing intriguing, intricate, inspirational, informative, and intelligent topics with our individual twists and talents.
We will present real stories, real solutions, and engage in real talk.
So we invite you to be our company every Sunday afternoon at 3:00 p.m. as we focus on transcendent thinking that will move you forward. You become the company you keep.
What company do you keep? Oh yeah, we are biological sisters by way of the south side of Chicago. So get ready to keep company with us and our guests as we talk about it.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Thank you for sticking around. I hope you have enjoyed the first segment of the show with Dr. Yolanda, my soror, my sister friend. We're having such a great conversation and just doing what we do as women, talking about all things that matter, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And so, as you can see, in our second half, we really want to talk some about our commonalities. We already talked about, she's a doctor, pediatrician. I'm a doctor in education, organizational leadership, and human resource development. But we're both also business owners and authors. And so, as you can see, Dr. Yolanda's books focus on health for the most part, and mine focuses on mental health. And so we're going to talk about that. So tell us about your books. I love the title of that book. The cover is absolutely beautiful. What was the impetus for you writing it, and what is it about?
Wow. So really what happened was it boiled down to, as a bariatrician, and even as a pediatrician dealing with weight loss. So I specialize in obesity management for children and adolescents. And what happened was it kind of spiraled into recognizing, as we talked about, to really affect a child and a child's life, you have to affect the parent. because the parents feeding them.
Yes.
The parents, if the parents convinced that they need physical activity, then the parents gonna sign them up, gonna get them there, gonna make sure. So you can't. It was very difficult for me. I found myself feeling bound and sort of like in this prism, if you will, giving all this information for children and it falling flat if the parent wasn't involved. Yes. So that's what really made me go out and do this second board certification. Not that I had extra time on my hands. I just needed to do that.
Yes.
So in my practice of seeing patients, I was kind of constantly saying the same things, things that you need to know to really lose weight and to keep it off. And so I started thinking, what are the top 10, like you said, 7 people like
stages
7
of
principles
marriage.
Of this, right? 7 stages of marriage, 7
Yes.
principles. So I said, well, what are the top 10 things? It kind of started off as like my David Letterman's top 10 things that I would tell a parent or person about weight loss. And it boiled down to this. There are 10 principles that I believe that really will help with not just weight loss, but weight management. And so my book, I entitled it Dr. Yolanda's Soul Food Diet. Now, soul is trademarked, that word, and it stands for savory, organic, unprocessed, and living foods, right? So Dr. Yolanda's Soul Food Diet, and then it's 10 secrets to lose weight, burn fat, and stop food cravings for good. And I absolutely mean that.
Yes.
Because what we don't know is that when you eat the wrong foods, it actually it brings something up in you to eat more of the wrong foods.
Right.
The biggest issue is sugar. Let's just throw that
Everybody
out there.
should know
so
that.
when you are eating too much sugar, your body is you're really putting yourself in a position where you just want more of it. It's addictive.
Yes.
But my 10 principles actually spell out the word discipline, and that seems
we
so
talked about
like,
that. Yes,
that's normal. Everybody knows that, but I really break it down. So it's an acronym. It's detoxification. It's impound the imposter. It's imposters. It's set yourself for success. Consistency is the key. Increase water, portion control, limit sugar, nutrients, vitamins, minerals. And then the last E is envision your victory and keep your eyes on the prize.
Yes.
And so it really
I like
breaks
that.
down all of the things that you really gonna, and what I love is on top of that, we talked about journaling, journaling being so important. So then I put together a journal that really takes you through all of those principles, and it has a little bit of extra information that's not in the book. That's my sort of little bonus, but it's great because it starts off with you able to the picture that you have when you start, and then what your goal looks like. We talked about a balance, right?
The balance.
A balance that's a will of good health. So we're not talking about just physical health and mental health. I'm talking intellectual health.
Yes.
I'm talking financial health, right?
Yes.
We were having this conversation. If you're in a community, and this is another reason that I do what I do, but if you're in a community like I work in Southeast DC, I work east of the river, where you have limited access,
right?
Very little information, nowhere to go and exercise, right, and have activity that's safe, then you're going to have problems with weight. Right. And so we then have the highest obesity in the district. We have the least access to fresh foods. And it used to be called a desert, a food desert. People would say, "Oh, it's a food desert." I'm actually going to correct you.
Okay.
It's not a food desert in Southeast DC. It's a food swamp. Oh. The difference is a food desert, you're talking about not having the access to fresh foods. But the problem with a food swamp is what you have is an abundant access to stuff that is just not good for you.
That's
so
good.
It's all
That's good.
Fast food.
Yes, you're right.
Bodegas, little corner stores.
Yes.
We have a corner store around the corner from my house where you're supposed to buy your produce. I've never seen anything so frightful in all my days. When I walked into just to see what was in the community, it just saddened me. Ward 6, 7, and 8. 2 grocery stores. And that's as of the last 10 years. There was one grocery store, a Safeway, that serviced all 3 districts for the longest.
And and when you pay attention and just having exposure in terms of where I live and being on the East Coast, but growing up on the South Side of Chicago, every time I go home and I'm on the South Side, particularly in a certain area, I'm like, well, where are the restaurants?
Yes.
Because only thing you see are, White Castles and Church's Chicken and McDonald's and fish places. And I'm like, well, where's a place where I can sit down and have some vegetables?
And you might get a food truck every once in a while that drives through.
Exactly. And so we have to go outside of the community unless you're cooking to have a decent meal.
And the problem with that is everybody doesn't have access.
Everybody
can't get outside of the community.
Can't.
There's so many people, and you know this from Chicago, but in D.C. that I watch, there are people who live in communities and in neighborhoods that never go across the river. Their school is on.
That's right.
In Southeast.
Oh, that's so true.
Their churches in Southeast.
Yes.
Their stores are in. Southeast.
Everything is right there.
Everything is there. So why go? But guess what? The flip side's true too.
Yes.
You got people on the other side of the river that never need to go to Southeast
That's
for
right.
anything.
So they don't know what's out there.
So then we don't know how to interact with one another. We wonder why.
Or what's going on. And so, and when we were talking about this topic, I kept thinking to myself, we have so much information.
Oh.
We just have a lot of information, and what it boils down to for many of us, and I was telling Dr. Yolanda the other day, for the most part, I try to be disciplined in terms of my eating, particularly during the week. But on Friday, that was unusual for me. I didn't get a chance to eat breakfast.
Right.
And so I had a cup of coffee, and then I think I had a yogurt or something. But by the time it was 4:00, I had another appointment because I knew I had to get to this conference. And so I said, I am starving. And the only thing that was around me was fast food.
Absolutely.
So here I go stopping at Wendy's because I didn't have a chance. And of course, I could have made a better choice.
Yes.
I could have made a choice to get a grilled chicken sandwich,
Yeah.
salad.
Yeah, even at Wendy's. Right?
Even at Wendy's.
Right.
But I was like, when you're so hungry, I was like, no, I'm getting me a hamburger, and one of the things about me though, I will only eat half of something.
Right.
I do because I know my husband and I went to eat before we went to church this morning, went to eat before I came here. And he and the waitress was like, you're not going to eat all that? I said, when I'm done, I'm done. I've just learned over time to just eat enough,
Right.
and be done with it instead of overeating. And so what do you see happening? I know children don't have choice. They don't have control. And so what kind of conversations do you end up having with parents, and what are their responses?
So this is perfect conversation, because for me, one of the things I talk about is that to parents is that we don't learn how to parent. There's no parenting school. There's no tests we have to take to prove. You got to get a license to drive a car.
Right.
But you don't need to pass anybody's test to bring a human being into the world.
Isn't that something?
And
I talked about that yesterday about getting married.
And so
you need to take a test.
You should take a test.
You should.
And you should be given provisional license.
Exactly.
Before you get married, for your kids, anyway.
Exactly.
So one of the things I talk to parents about is, one, first of all, to remove the condemnation, especially when the child is already overweight or obese. My point to them is often, you weren't taught how to feed your child. I grew up in a family where there were 4 children. So my mother didn't really have to say a lot to us. She put food on the table. Whatever we ate, when it was gone, it was gone. And I would laugh. I'd laugh a lot now because I still eat fast. As much as I know, as much as I've taught people. Because I was the youngest of 4, and I had to eat. Like, I had 3 brothers. They were older than me. They took my food, grabbed stuff, and I was like, whatever was left. So I learned to grab what I could when I could, and I ate. And I learned to eat fast. In residency, I didn't have time. So I would eat so fast that I still eat fast, but I'm the same way. I know portions because that's what I've learned, and I teach it. So what I tell parents is, one, you've never been taught how to do this.
Right.
So I'm going to have a conversation about this, not from a point of view where I know everything,
right,
but I know that you weren't necessarily taught this.
Right.
Stop telling kids to clean their plates.
Yes.
One, because
how many of you all can relate
and
to
I
that?
grew up with that, right? Like,
most of us.
Doing
But why did they tell us that? Because most of our parents was food, right?
But here's my point.
And my husband still is like that.
I'm telling you, we grow up though. This is the point I was
going to leave that food
make.
on the. They were like, no, you need to take that food.
But
I'm
the
thinking
point
I'm not going to eat
make
it.
is we've taught ourselves to overeat,
and don't waste the food.
We've been taught to overeat.
Yes.
Because one, parents aren't taught how much as a parent, I knew this because I studied it, that my 3-year-old needed less food than my 7-year-old, who needed less food than my 11-year-old. Now, my 11-year-old needed the same amount as an adult, but guess what? An adult doesn't need a plate full of food.
Right.
You know, plates in themselves, the history of plates from 1960, I have some pictures in some of the in my book and some other stuff that I show, from 1960 to 2010 have quadrupled.
Yes, they are. They're much larger.
So we have actually,
and we feel them.
Restaurants, things like that, you get bigger sizes.
Yes.
So what I talk to parents about is understanding what portions look like, and giving basic stuff. You know, everybody knows it. Your hand size, a half of your fist. And the reason that works is because a child's half a fist is smaller than my half a fist. So when I say your half a fist, I'm talking about of the person who's eating the food.
Right.
So their size is going to be comparable to their body parts. My size and portions are going to be comparable to my body parts. So, and that being said, there's portions, there's limiting sugar, there's water.
I was going to talk about your water. Let's talk about your water, because I'm just adamant. I believe in the power, the healing power of water, and how important it is. I drink water all day long, and since I started buying your wonderful alkaline water, I actually love it.
Yes.
And so it's when I drink other water, I can taste the difference.
Can taste the
so
difference.
Talk about that wonderful water.
So one of the things I talk about, so the importance of water, even if you didn't do alkaline, let me just put you here.
Exactly.
Water itself, we're 60 to 70%
water. Right.
So we're constantly losing water, talking, perspiring, urination. We're always losing water. And it's funny to me how people will say they're thirsty, but they'll drink a soda. Or a juice or something sweet. And what you don't know is when you drink sugary drinks, it actually dehydrates you.
Yes, it does.
Because your body is trying to flush out the sugar by actually releasing excess water to flush out that sugar.
Yes.
So you become more dehydrated. So that's number one. Number two, we're often, and studies show this, we're often thirsty when we think we're hungry.
Yep.
So the first thing you should do when you feel hunger is drink some water.
Yes.
And not just drink something, drink water.
Yes.
We go to restaurants and the first thing we're offered is tea, colas, coffee, drink water, not the bread that's brought to the table because that's all sugar. Drink some water. But water itself, now when it comes to alkaline water, the benefits of alkaline water, I could talk about forever, but I will just give you a few. It's detoxifying.
Yes.
So I talked about discipline, and the first word was detoxification.
Yes.
We're toxic. We have toxic stress. Cortisol, just a hormone that we produce when we're stressed, when we're overworked. Friday is a perfect example for you.
My goodness.
You got so much to do. You got so much on your plate. You got to be here. You got to be there for your kids, for your husband, for you in your job, and then a conference, and then you write books, and I know that feeling. And so sometimes it's just toxic stress that builds up.
Yes.
And alkaline water is detoxifying when it comes to stress, when it comes to hormones, when it comes to these enzymes that make us. And then it decreases inflammation. I've patients and clients who have had arthritis, tendonitis, swelling, and they're drinking alkaline water, and that goes away. So there's all kinds of reasons. And it boosts your immune system.
Exactly.
And it mobilizes, this is my favorite, it actually mobilizes fat cells.
Yes.
So in a acidic environment, your fat cells are stable. They're almost encapsulated. And so in an alkaline, which is a more basic environment, the fat cells destabilize and you lose weight faster. So when I have a patient that I'm working with and they hit a plateau, one of the reasons I really talk about my alkaline water, and I call it medical grade, because I can adjust pH.
Right.
So I'm going to bump up your pH so that you get the breakthrough from that plateau.
Right.
So I mean, it's so much about water that if you aren't drinking water right now, and you're drinking more sodas and juices, I implore you. I say, if you do nothing else that I tell you to do, just drink more water.
And although I drank a lot of water, I was one that would drink a glass of wine, like a glass of red wine at night. And I'm going to tell you, I could feel that I was dehydrated. I didn't associate it with the wine.
Absolutely.
And then I developed actually an allergy to red wine. And so instead of drinking red wine, I just drink some water at night. And I just feel so much better. And plus the calories. You don't really still think about the calories.
Let me give you a tidbit about that red wine piece. that allergy to red wine,
My
a lot of
gosh.
times it's actually sulfites.
Well, that's what it was.
And
yes,
one
exactly.
of the things I started doing, and I'll talk to you about this,
Yes.
off camera, off the show, but I actually started distributing something called clean crafted wines for that very reason.
Oh.
It's low in sugar and hardly any sulfites. And I
Yes.
literally just started doing this.
Yes.
So, and it's through a company called Scout and Cellar, but it's one of the only American companies that specializes in this organic, clean crafted wine. So, I mean,
I'll
when
have
I
to check
tell
that
you
out.
almost minimal sulfites, so it literally boasts about the fact that you're no longer going to get these allergies, the inflammation. I was getting swelling in my fingers,
Yes.
and then
Yes.
I was like, "What's going on?" And I
The
like a
sulfites.
glass of red wine too, and I'll tell people all the time, "I know you're living."
Right.
I have plenty of patients that are like, "I'm only going to do so much, but I'm going to drink my wine."
Yeah.
And it's heart healthy. They're telling me all kinds. I said, "Look, I get it. What I like about this particular wine is it actually fits into a ketogenic diet."
Yes. And let me tell you, and what I ended up doing was diagnosing myself.
Yes.
To be very honest with you,
Yes,
I was going to
sometimes we
doctors,
do.
and I want to really talk about that piece. It's okay, God created all doctors, and we need to also know how our bodies function. Right, and we just can't let people just tell us anything. And they were saying that you're healthy, and I'm like, well, no.
Yeah.
And so I started looking at what was in my diet, because
Right.
I know very clearly that so much of our health issues is associated with our diets. And when I started thinking about it, I was like, let me stop this. And sure enough, with all the symptoms that I had went away.
This is a public service announcement.
Yes.
If you have a physician that is pushing medications
no.
and
Yes.
drugs before they push lifestyle changes, I have a problem with that. And I don't
Yes.
care what you come to them with.
Yes.
I don't care if it's heart. I don't care if it's lung. I don't care. The fact is, 90% of the things that we encounter really can be at least initially dealt with a change in diet.
No doubt.
Because there's something
Yes.
that you're eating that you're reacting
Right.
to, or something that's missing in your diet that you just don't know. We're creatures of habit. We eat the same
Exactly.
thing all the time.
All the time.
The things we like. One of the reasons, chapter 9 is nutrients, vitamins, minerals, is because you gotta be taking. You have to take multivitamins for so many reasons. One, because our foods don't even have the same amount of vitamins and minerals and nutrients that they had just 20 years ago,
Right.
because our soil is depleted.
Yes,
So
exactly.
you have to get these extra ways of getting this stuff into you. So you're right. If you have a doctor who says,
Yeah.
do this instead of changing your lifestyle,
Right.
I would say be careful,
Yeah.
and you should be listening to your body.
No doubt about
That's my
it.
number one advice to doctors. I mean, to children and their parents.
Right.
I'm going to listen to you. We're partners in
Right.
this. I'm not just telling you what's wrong with you.
Right.
You're actually giving me information.
giving you the
I
information.
don't diagnose on my own. I diagnose based on what you tell me
That
about
is
yourself
correct.
and the signs
Yes.
and symptoms that I'm
Yes.
seeing.
And so, as you all very well know, we have about 3 minutes left of the show. It's so awesome. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read a passage from my book, and I'm going to let Dr. Yolanda, I think there's one particular passage or something you wanted to share from your book. And so everything to me, in terms of what I've studied, really starts with your mindset. So in my book, Mind Your Mind, # think about it, mastering your state of mind.
Wow.
The opening says every human being has a state of mind that influences their thinking, behavior, and attitude.
Wow.
The state of mind is the driving force for all that we do, whether it is a healthy mind, a traumatized mind, or a chemically imbalanced mind. Our actions are an authentic reflection of our state of mind. So what is your state of mind when it comes to your health?
That's deep. This is my first book. I have so much I would share with you, but this is the one thing I'll say. We talked about habits.
Yes. Oh,
and
yes.
habits are really essentially what this boils down to. Because I'm going to give a bunch of information. Somebody else will give you some information.
Yes.
And
Yes.
you may try it for a little while. And when you don't get the results that you want to see, you want to move on. Because it's
Right.
not instantaneous.
That's
it's
right.
not just a shot. It's not
Yes.
this quick fix.
Yes.
And so this era, this society of prestidigitation and instant results,
Yes.
has people believing that they could just do something in a flash, and you can't. So my whole point is I want you to build good habits. And there are a couple of things I just want you to say quickly. if you are doing these things that I'm about to really quickly mention, you might be training to be a sumo wrestler. Okay? Look this up.
1 minute. Hurry
Skipping
up.
breakfast,
Yep. Oh, my
exercising on an empty stomach, eating just a couple of large meals a day, not small meals throughout the day, going to sleep immediately after eating, drinking excessive alcohol, or eating very late in the day, which again is right before going to sleep. These are the 6 things that sumo wrestlers do to build that layer of fat that they keep on them to have that body habitus.
What an analogy.
So if you are not trying to be a sumo wrestler, you need to break some of these habits.
Yes. So, this has been so good. We could just go on and on and on. And so we have 1 minute left, and Dr. Yolanda is going to close us out with scripture and tell them how they can contact you.
You can contact me through my website is dryolandamd.com. And you can email me info@dryolandamd.com. I'm on Facebook, Yolanda Lewis Ragland, MD. There's all kinds of ways. Here's what I want to say. This is a scripture that I love. Deuteronomy 30:19 says, I call heaven and earth to witness against you today. I place before you life and death, blessings and curse. Choose life so that you and your children will live.
Yes.
So this is a choice, a mindset, habits that you have to learn, and really master. It's about discipline, learning to eat the right foods, soul foods, savory, organic, unprocessed living foods. And the last thing I'll tell you is weight loss and weight management is 85% nutrition.
That's what it is.
15%
Yes.
everything else, and you have 100% control over that 85%.
Yes, thank you all so much for tuning in today. This was such a great show. Have a blessed afternoon, and we'll see you next time. Thank you for tuning in.
Thank you.
Welcome to Sisters in Company Talking About It live show. Hosted by me, Dr. Sharon Cradle, and Sherelle Higgins. We will be discussing intriguing, intricate, inspirational, informative, and intelligent topics with our individual twists and talents.
We will present real stories, real solutions, and engage in real talk.
So we invite you to be our company every Sunday afternoon at 3:00 p.m. as we focus on transcendent thinking that will move you forward. You become the company you keep.
What company do you keep? Oh yeah, we are biological sisters by way of the south side of Chicago. So get ready to keep company with us and our guests as we talk about it.